Why did Jesus say he was the Son of Man? Wasn't he the Son of God? And why would all this be important? Well, this is Wesley here for the Seed of Life, and in this video we're going to look at why Jesus used this specific title, the Son of Man, to claim his divinity and show how Jesus interpreted himself or presented himself, but also presented his gospel. Christians like to think that the gospel just kind of fell out of the sky. It was something completely new, but that is not true. Jesus preached the gospel of the kingdom before even one letter of the New Testament was written. And the title of Son of Man is right at the core of how Jesus presented himself and the gospel he preached. There's multiple titles in the Gospels about Jesus. The Son of David, for example, Son of God, the Son of Man, Christ, the Messiah. But what title did Jesus use to describe himself? It's not even close. All 78 times that the term the Son of Man is used in the Gospels, it is Jesus applying the term to himself. 78 times. This opposed to only 11 times taking the title Messiah or Christ, and only 5 times using the term Son of God. While the Son of Man seems to run counter to a claim to divinity, we will see that this is actually a more precise way of Jesus presenting himself and presenting who he really is. That he's presenting himself as the God of the universe, specifically the God of Israel, now become a man. Let's look at one instance where this becomes clear. In Mark's gospel, which is the oldest gospel we have, we see in Mark 14, right before Jesus is crucified, when he's put on trial before the high priest, we see that the high priest asks him this question. In Mark 14, verse 61, "Are you the Christ," or Messiah, "the Son of the Blessed?" So here we have the two titles, right? Messiah and Son of God. And Jesus' answer is very telling. He says, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Jesus agrees with the question that he is indeed the Christ, that he is the Son of the Blessed, but he adds to it. He clarifies further. He says, basically, "I am the Son of Man, and I will come with the clouds." And when they hear that, that's when they tear their robes. That's when they cry out blasphemy, and that's when they condemn him to death. So why? Why would saying the Son of Man, Jesus identifying himself as the Son of Man, why would that be such a blasphemous claim? For us to know why this is such a controversial statement, we need to know that the Son of Man is not just a fancy way of saying you're a human being. It was actually a specific reference to a prophecy, a vision by Daniel, which is found in the Old Testament. And it refers to a very specific divine-like human figure. This passage is found in Daniel 7. Let's take a look. In verse 13 and 14, we read, "I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed." Well, this passage of Daniel 7 lies at the core of how Jesus presents himself and the gospel he preaches. This is the Son of Man figure that Jesus is identifying himself with. So let's just dive into this and look at it line by line to see why. "And behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man." It is important to know that in the Old Testament, only God comes with the clouds of heaven. We read in Isaiah 19, verse 1, "The Lord is riding on a swift cloud and comes to Egypt." We read in Psalm 104, verse 3, "He makes the clouds his chariot." Or in Jeremiah 4, verse 13, "He comes up like the clouds, his chariots like the whirlwind." Or Psalm 18, especially verse 9 and 12, is even more descriptive. "He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He came swiftly on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, thick clouds dark with water. Out of the brightness before him, hailstones and coals of fire broke through his clouds. So we see that this is how God is described. This is kind of like a poetic way of talking about this big, thick cloak of clouds covering God, and he's coming down. So we see that this is a way that God is described in the Old Testament consistently, especially in his role as a judge. All these passages that are talking about God riding the clouds, it's talking about God bringing judgment on Egypt or on Israel. And as we look in Daniel 7, where we have this Son of Man on the clouds, we also see that it's a context of judgment. We see that thrones are being placed and the beasts, the kingdoms of the world are being judged. But now we see one like a Son of Man coming on the clouds. How is that possible? How could a man come in judgment like he is God himself? But it gets even weirder. In the next two lines, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. Now, the Ancient of Days is a title for God. So now we have a divine-like man doing what only God does, coming on the clouds of heaven. But he's coming before God. So God is coming to God. How strange. The next lines, and to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. So here we have this God-like being coming in judgment. He receives a kingdom. He receives dominion. And the word translated as serve, that he's going to be served, is pelach, which is used to describe paying reverence to a deity. So the Son of Man figure is somehow like God. And it's interesting to see that he is not just a king over Israel. He comes as a king over all the earth. But that creates another conflict, because in the Old Testament, only God is seen as the king over all the earth. We can see that in Psalm 22, in Psalm 47, or even in Zechariah 14, when it shows that when there's this final judgment moment, God comes down, again, as the judge to free Israel, and then he becomes king over all the earth. But here in Daniel's vision, we see that it is actually this Son of Man figure that is receiving the kingdom from the Father. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. So here we see again that the Son of Man must in some way be divine, because he is eternal. His dominion lasts forever. He can forever rule. So we see that if Jesus claims to be the Son of Man, he's not saying that he's simply a human. He's saying, I am that divine human that Daniel is talking about. I am going to judge the earth as God. I am going to be the eternal king of the earth as God. I'm going to receive worship as God. Jesus was not just preaching that God's kingdom was around the corner. He was saying that he was the king. So he was God. In Mark 2, we see a paralytic that is brought to Jesus. And before healing him, Jesus says to him, your sins are forgiven. And the scribes, which are standing by, rightly conclude that such a thing is blasphemy. Only God can forgive sins. But what Jesus says is interesting. He answers them by saying that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. Then he speaks to the paralytic and say, get up, pick up your bed, go home. And he heals him. So Jesus shows that he has the authority to forgive sins because he was the Son of Man, because he was God. And this physical healing proved the spiritual healing of the forgiveness of sin. So let's try to recap what we've learned. The Son of Man is not a description. It's a title referring to a divine figure described in Daniel 7. This figure comes in judgments on the clouds, like God, receives worship, like God, becomes king over all the earth, like God, and with an everlasting kingdom. Next point, Jesus used this title to clarify that he was indeed God, claiming authority to forgive sins, for example, or like we saw in the first example, saying that he's going to come and sit at the right hand of power. Fourth point, Jesus' opponents acknowledged that this was indeed a claim to be God, and they executed him for it on the charges of blasphemy. So we see this was actually a very specific claim to deity. It was a claim to not just being the Messiah, but to be Israel's God in the flesh. Jesus claimed he came from heaven, that he would go back to heaven and would return as the Son of Man to judge the nations and to start a new kingdom on earth, to start God's kingdom, his kingdom on earth. So what does this have to do with the gospel? How is that good news for us, right? Well, if we look at Daniel, we'll see why. In verse 18, he adds, "But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever, and ever." So the Son of the Man isn't the only one who will rule in this kingdom. Verse 22, until the saints are suffering, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High. And the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. So the judgment that the Son of Man is bringing is going to be a relief for the saints, and it's going to be against the evil empires of the earth. Verse 27, "And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. And his kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him." So the Son of Man will share his judgment, his rule with a people, and somehow they will also partake in this everlasting kingdom forever and ever and ever. And this is the invitation of the gospel. Turn from your sin and follow the God-man, Jesus, as your new king, and you will share in this new world to come. To access a kingdom, you need a passport, in this world at least. Do you have a passport to get past heaven's gates? Do you follow the king of this new world to come? When he comes in judgment, will it be for you or will it be against you? Are you in the right with this eternal king? Are you building his kingdom or fighting against it? The invitation stands. Come and follow Jesus, the new king over this earth, the Son of God, the Son of Man. If you want to read more about the topic, read Son of Man, the Gospel of Daniel 7 by Samuel Whitefield. He goes in way deeper in the role of Daniel 7 in the gospel that Jesus has preached and how the title of Son of Man was connected to it. So, hope you learned something here. See you in the next one.